Hi, this is Ruth Theresa with One Inspired Woman, and today I'm answering a Dear Ruth Theresa question, and this one is a super complicated, super variable kind of energy. Hi, my name is Ruth Theresa with One Inspired Woman. I'm an intuitive psychic medium here in the Sugar Land area. That's just outside of Houston. I work with my angels and guides to assist my clients in many areas of their lives, to bring them special messages from loved ones who have passed, to dialogue with their angels for guidance into their own situation, or to assist them with their own psychic abilities. If you like my content, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. So today I'm answering a Dear Ruth Theresa question, and this came in from a client of mine who is caregiving for her father as he gets older. And I will tell you, kind of caregiving for a parent or a sibling that's older, or someone who's kind of declining in life. Because when we're inclining in life, it's kind of like as a baby, they get to be able to hold themselves up a little bit better. They don't need your help changing diapers as much. They learn how to go to potty training and all that kind of stuff. So they're kind of learning more and more about themselves and kind of being able to take control over what's going on around them. Where aging parents or elderly people that are around us, it kind of goes in the opposite direction. They were able to take care of themselves, and then this happened and they weren't able to take care of this, or now they're kind of like diminished capacity. They could be getting Alzheimer's or dementia, and so that can kind of really affect how they take care of themselves and how they kind of show up in their world. So kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's one of those, this is a super, super, super complex question, because how you deal with your parents as they get older has a lot to do with how you felt about them when you were a child. It's kind of one of those interesting ones. If you felt loved and accepted by your parents, that's how you're going to treat them as they get older. If you felt like you got the raw deal, a lot of times like you kind of treat them with that energy, and it's kind of like, this is how they raised me, so this must be how they want me to raise, kind of work through them. And so this can be a very, very complex hard issue to work through. And it doesn't mean you can't, it just means that you really have to work through it. And one of the things that I found in my life, and I will tell you in a lot of my clients' lives as well, is that when a parent is aging and kind of going through that, a lot of times what that child is dealing with, the caregiver and then the people around them, it's one of those, everybody's missing or losing somebody different to them. I know it sounds really strange, but y'all were all parents. Like, even if the parent had like 2 or 3 kids or 5 kids or 10 kids or whatever it is, that each of those kids are missing someone different, because one of them may be like really, really close with their parent, and someone may be more distant with their parent. One may be live right around the corner and do a lot of things with their parent, and the other one may be like, I live 10 hours away and I don't get to see you that often. So it doesn't mean that it's bad or anything else. It just means that everybody has their own relationship, and usually I will say that's usually based on their childhood. Did they feel really close to their parents? Did they not feel really close to their parents? All of that has a lot to do with how they feel about it now as they're going through this process. And so it's one of those, each person is really losing somebody else. You might be losing your father, but to you it may be your father and your best friend. To them it may be just a father figure. To them it could just be a dad that raised them. So that's what I'm saying, it's kind of like, it can be very complex and kind of really interesting how each person is going to work or deal through this. And inevitably it's going to happen that this person is going to pass. And I guarantee you, as you get closer and closer to that time frame or that person passes, this gets worse and worse, because it's one of those, it's like, yes, all of y'all are losing your dad, and that's really, really sad. But I will guarantee you that kind of the interesting part is that dad represented something different for each of you. You're all losing a dad. Yes, all 10 or 20 of you, or 2 or 3 of you, or whatever it is, are losing a dad. But I guarantee you that person, that dad figure, held different energy for each of you. Dad is not the same person he is with one as he is with another. One of them he maybe really relate to, and y'all are almost like best friends, and another one where like it's not that big a deal, or it's kind of more of an acquaintance energy. not good or bad. It just, that's the relationship you have. And even if y'all are all somewhat close to him, some may be closer, like best friends, and other ones may be, oh, we're friendly, that sort of thing. So everybody has a different relationship with that person. And as you get closer to that time frame where they're going to pass, everybody kind of has that energy of like, I'm losing somebody. And some of them are like, well, I'm losing more than you. No, you're still losing the same person, just what you think about them or how you deal with them or how you relate to them can be different or feel differently. And a lot of times when this happens in a family, this can really like bring a family back together, or it can literally like explode the family. And that's kind of like some different ways. I will tell you that caregiving is something that takes a toll on each person differently. As they get like less being able to take care of things, it can really be something harsh for each person to kind of deal with. Like maybe one person is like, I didn't really feel like I ever got, you know, loved by dad, or the other person would be like, I always felt accepted by dad, or someone else said, I never felt like he was proud of me. Everybody has different energy, and as long as you're talking about it, the better off the family is going to be and more likely to bring everybody back together. But a lot of times people are already kind of like, they're already in their feelings, they're already in their emotions, and they start pulling out of the relationships and kind of like, I don't want to deal with this, I don't want to do this part. And it kind of becomes like almost like this torture kind of for the caregiver, because it's like, I want to be a part of this as they get ready to pass, but the rest of the family doesn't feel that way. So it's kind of like, oh, how do we do that part? So it's one of those, like I said, the best way to do this is really kind of talking out things, getting a counselor if necessary. That can really help work through some of these different activities, talking things out, getting clarity with everybody. That can be something that's really, really special. And a lot of times I think it's interesting who the caregivers are, because a lot of times it may not be the one that goes, wow, I really feel close to dad and I'm going to do this. Sometimes it's the person that's like, I feel like the furthest away from him and I want to do this. I know it can be really like, wow, this is an interesting concept. But I will tell you, when you are caring for someone as they get older, the family should be giving them everything that they require, all of the ingredients. I've had this with one client so far, and I thought it was like just an amazing thing. And when I met with her, the family had already put this into place, so I'm just going to tell you the story of what they had in place. Is one of the siblings was able to take off a long period of time and stay with their aging parent, and everybody else got together and they had a monthly meeting, and it was either by phone or like everybody kind of lived somewhat close to each other so that if necessary they could just show up. Sometimes people were on trips or whatever else, and so they called in. This was only for the siblings. This was no spouses allowed. Yes. Which I think made it so much easier. They sat down. They usually had some type of snack together. So I think sometimes like food can kind of help people kind of open up a little bit more, but they usually had a cup of coffee and a couple of cookies or something like that. And everybody kind of talked about it. Now each of the siblings, because one was kind of giving up her part of her retirement for this, everybody paid her salary. So everybody kind of like contributed, and everybody contributed sometimes like a little bit different amount. But it's one of those, like they put money in for her to be able to live while she was doing this, pay her bills, because she didn't get rid of her house, so she needed to pay all of those bills. And then one of the things that I thought was really interesting is she got one night off a week. And I was like, that is amazing, because a lot of times like people don't put that in there and they don't realize like that caregiver really has to be taken care of as well. This can be like, oh my gosh, this is crazy busy. And so they gave her one night off a week, and literally a week off during like twice a year, like once in the spring and then once around Christmas or so, so she could have like time with her friends and her family and that sort of thing. And so that was kind of like, wow, this is really cool. And during that time frame, either a nurse was brought in to kind of care for the parent, or one of the other siblings came in for that period of time. And everybody kind of really communicated, so everybody was in great communication with all of this. Like I said, I've only seen that with one family. I wish there were so many more. But I will tell you that caregivers kind of energy is, it is great to be kind of like receiving that kind of care from someone who really loves you or wants to kind of get to know you better. That kind of makes things a lot easier. One of the things I will tell you, kind of like a personal story for me, is when I was a teenager, I lived with my grandparents, and my grandparents were 68 years older than I was. I know. And I learned so much from them. It's unbelievable. But when my grandfather was getting elderly, and he had dementia and Alzheimer's, so it was kind of like, didn't always know who everybody was and how to deal with all of this energy. But one of the things that I will explain to you is that one of his daughters, one of my aunts, came to me and said, wow, I really wish you could have seen him in his prime. And I really wish you could have seen when he was like this go-getter, kind of doing his business and kind of like changing the world, and kind of, even if it's just like our little world where we lived in. And I thought it was really interesting. And now, granted, you're talking to someone who was like 17 or 18 years old at the time, me. And I thought it was kind of an interesting energy, because she said this to me, and kind of the insight that I got was, I understand where you're coming from, but I've been there with him. And she was just kind of like, what? And I said, because of his Alzheimer's, dementia, and so as I looked at my aunt's face, kind of like this shock and awe of like, what? I really got a chance to maybe share some of my own psychic abilities or my psychic insight with her. I thought that was kind of like not really sure like where this answer came from at the time. Yet it was kind of one of those, like, when I said it, I was like, wow, that is like interesting. Because one of the things that I had realized is, when I was dealing with my grandfather, at times he was acting like a small child. That's just part of the dementia, Alzheimer's kind of issues. And it was kind of really interesting, because I would listen to his stories, probably because I was his granddaughter, so I was used to listening to his stories. But he would talk about like him playing with his brothers and sisters. He would talk about like getting on the donkey and riding the donkey, or going to do this or going to do that. So in a lot of ways, I felt like I was there with him as a child, even if I wasn't physically there. There were stories about him, and he told me of like the first time he got to drive a car, what were the circumstances, kind of what was going on. And that was kind of like one of those amazing insights. And then I also got to kind of, he would tell me stories about like when he first met my grandmother, and kind of like what he thought about her and how cute she was and that sort of thing. And it was just one of those like really amazing insights for myself and for my aunt as well, because she was kind of like, you know, talking about it like, you know, your glass is half empty, that you don't get to see him the way he used to be, the way I got to see him and the way I got to interact with him. But I think it was kind of one of those like shock and awe, kind of like, it wasn't meant to be, but kind of one of those like, I was there. I was there when he was a child, because he told me the stories about it, like as if it happened right then, or what happened that day. And then stories when he was a teenager and how he did this and when he did this and all of those kind of things. So I did get this amazing insight into my grandfather's life. And that was something that I treasure still to this day. Those stories were amazing. Those stories were so insightful, because it wasn't like he was trying to impress me or do anything else. He was just telling me about his day. And some of those stories about his day were just kind of one of those like, wow, I get to see this in a completely different way. And so sometimes those are the blessings that we have as someone gets older. We get to kind of have that amazing insight into their life. And I will tell you, usually only the caregivers that have that special heart of like being able to be open to all of this and really listen with their heart of kind of like, yes, I'm right there for this person. They're telling me about their story, about their childhood and what happened and how they felt about it. So that was like an amazing insight to all of this energy. And I will tell you, having the opportunity to work with someone, work with caregivers at times. I have worked with many of them over my career, and I think that's just an amazing insight to have, of having that insight into what's going on with your parents, and not just like hearing the story as an adult of what happened when they were 5 or 6 years old. Literally, they go back in time almost to that time frame. So it was kind of like, it just takes an amazing energy in this way of kind of being able to connect with them during that time frame and really kind of amazingly connect with their energy. That was something that I treasure. I treasured then and I treasure now. So let's do some angel cards and get us some deeper insight. This one is the one popping up, friendships. I think that's kind of one of the insights that I learned, was I felt more like a friend to my grandfather than I did a granddaughter at times, being a caregiver. I felt like I could understand him in a way that maybe other people didn't, because I got to be there with him during that time frame. So I got to be there when he was really that age. Like I said, it was almost like a schoolmate kind of energy, and being there for him. And that was kind of one of those interesting things. Forgiveness. This is something that I really learned during this time frame, because it was, interestingly for me, a time where I could really think about like what happened to him and how did that affect or change him to become the person he really was. And it's one of those, and I think a lot of people think like, oh, this person is a mean, evil person or whatever else. And not that my grandfather was mean or evil, but it's one of those, like, their stories, their insight, how they dealt with things, how they worked through life, how they thought about their parents or didn't think about their parents or grandparents or whatever else. Like, that is some insights that you kind of have to just forget everything that you know, or kind of forgive everything that you know, and just be in that moment with them, because that's kind of the amazing part of it, is like you get to see that life in a different way before someone broke their heart, before this happened or before that happened. And that was just kind of one of those amazing, interesting energies. And do this. Got a couple of them that are interesting, and this is the card that's coming out. It was kind of like falling out the backside, but this one is all about listening. And I think that's kind of one of those interesting things, that listening to them with your heart, with your soul, and just being there in that moment and not necessarily correcting them. It's one of those, it's not about like, I'm not this person, I'm this person. If he thought I was his sister, I just go with the flow. Okay, fine, I'm the sister energy. Or if I was his brother that day or whatever else, I just went with it. I did not kind of interrupt him. I didn't like correct him or anything else. And I think that's one of those amazing insights that I had, because it was one of those, when you just kind of let their energy flow, it had amazing stories, not only for myself, but hopefully for other people as well. I thank you so much for joining me today, and I know that we'll be talking again soon.